I'm in scene 2 start, and this is going to be the environment that we are going to light for this module. The main feature that you're probably seeing right now is the fact that there are a lot of particle effects, and this is something that we need to keep in mind as we're lighting the scene. So let's take a look at how these particle effects look in game. So I'm going to press play. I'm going to switch back over to the scene view, and we could see that we have kind of a fog that's set up as a bluish hue, and also if we zoom in, we have a lot of torches. So these are going to be a major light source for this level. I'm going to get out of play mode now. Now let's take a little bit of a peek at the environment itself. So we could see by the background that this is supposed to be kind of a cave environment, and there are two main sections. This front area we could see is blocked off by a door here, and then this back area where probably a lot of the gameplay is going to occur. Aside from establishing the base lighting, we're going to be focusing primarily on the detail lighting in the front here. My challenge to you is that once we're complete, to come and try and create a similar lighting scenario for this back area. All that being said, I want to draw your attention to a couple values that I changed in the light mapper settings. If you're over in the inspector, click over to the lighting tab and scroll down until you see the light mapper settings. Because this environment is fairly large, if we left the light mapper settings at default values, it would take a really long time for our maps to bake as we were working. So, in the interest of keeping things moving along at a very nice clip, I've decreased the indirect resolution to 0.25 and the light map resolution to 25. This will keep our light maps really light, and then at the end when we go back and do a final pass, we'll increase these back to the default values so we get a better quality map. Let's go ahead and get started on the lighting. So I'm going to zoom out here, and the main thing that I want to establish first is the ambient light level. Right now it's a little flat and it's a little too bright for my tastes. We want to give the feeling of being in a cave, and I don't think this light as a base level is really working. You'll notice if we zoom out that we have a procedural skybox, so let's go ahead and start there by editing that a bit. We don't have a directional light in our scene yet, so I'm going to go ahead and add one. So I'm going to go to Game Object, Light, and Directional Light. Now this is going to make our scene very bright to start with, but don't worry, we're going to tone that down. I'm going to go back to the inspector, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to move this light to the very beginning of the scene, just so we have an easy way to access it. Now our sun's pretty far up in the sky right now. I think if we zoom out a little bit we could see that it's way up there. So I'm going to rotate it down so it's closer to a sunset level. This will immediately begin to darken up our scene. There we go. Now the intensity of the light is still quite high, which is why we're getting a lot of contributed light. So I'm going to set this intensity down to something like 0.2, or maybe down to 0.25. We just want a little bit of contributing light. I'm also going to set the color of our directional light to something that matches that kind of blue fog that we have going on. So I'm going to select the color swatch. I'm going to click on kind of this blue-purple hue, start experimenting. Be a little bit more on the blue side. Maybe not so dramatic, but there we go. We're starting to get some interesting color in our scene. We could see that this was reflecting primarily on the stone background. So I think that adds a nice little bit of color to our scene. Let's go over to the lighting tab, scroll up to the environment section, and we can see that the intensity multiplier of the environment lighting is currently set to 1.1. Let's drag this down a little bit. At around 0.3 or so, we start getting some more interesting lighting information. So it's a bit darker, but keep in mind that we are going to be adding additional lights. Right now we're just trying to establish the base level ambient light. Now this is something that we don't want to be full dark, although realistically in a cave we wouldn't have really any ambient light. But this is a video game world and we want to make sure that our characters can actually see where they're going. I'm fairly happy with that as a base level. Now let's move on to adding light information to our torches, since they're going to be the main source of light in our scene. So I'm going to zoom in to one of the torches here, and we can see that if we select them, it takes a little bit of digging, but by selecting the particle effect, you could actually hit F in the hierarchy and select the top level lantern object. Now notice that these aren't prefabs, so we're going to have to make some adjustments once we have the light set up, but that won't be a problem. I'm actually going to work with this light over here, and we can see that we have the lantern mesh itself and the fire particle effect, and that's all underneath the lantern lit group. So we're going to want to add a light to this group. So I'm going to right click over lantern lit. I'm going to go to light and I'm going to choose point light. This automatically puts our point light in the group, so we don't have to worry about forgetting to group it later on down the line. Now immediately we can see that this light is super dramatic and really big for the scene. So let's go ahead and first position it so it's in the appropriate location, which is right on our fire here. And now let's bring down the range to something not so far out. We want to give kind of an air of mystery to our scene, so these lanterns are lighting just enough so the player can see where they're going, but perhaps is a little wary of taking their next steps. Let's use this radius as the starting point. We have it around 3.4. We'll definitely adjust this as we go, but let's set the color. So we want the color of our light to reflect the color of the fire here. So let's click on the color swatch, and let's give it a much warmer tone. So I'm going to go into kind of the yellow-orange hue here. And I am going to start adjusting. I'm looking at the color that's hitting the stone here. I'm going to bring this up a little bit and then over a bit more towards white. There we go. So that's starting to contribute some nice warm color without being too overtly colored. I'm happy with that. And close this. And let's see if we want to adjust the position or radius any further. Bring the light down a little bit more just so we're getting more light on the surface itself. And let's adjust the radius. Keep in mind that this is all going to be multiplied as the torches appear throughout the scene. So I think a value of about 2.8 is probably going to do us pretty well. I want to propagate this light to all of the other lanterns in my scene. I'm going to select the lantern lit top level group object, and you'll notice that at one point it used to be a prefab. We could see right here that the word prefab is kind of a yellowish tone. I'm going to see if I can't try reconnecting it by clicking on apply, and unfortunately that didn't work, but that's okay. We're going to create our own custom prefab with this lantern, and then we're going to replace it with the other lanterns in the scene. This way, as we make adjustments to one lantern, we could update all of those adjustments to the rest as well. So I'm going to go into my prefabs folder, and I'm just going to drag in this lantern lit object. There we go, now it's a prefab. If we open up this drop down, we could see that we have all of our elements and our point light. So I'm just going to rename this to lantern lit, get rid of that 2 there. And I'm going to quickly go through the scene and replace the lanterns in this front section. To make sure that our new lantern prefab appears in the exact same position as our existing lanterns, I'm going to drag them in as a child of the existing lantern, and I'm going to reset the position. Then I'm going to drag out the new lantern prefab so it's no longer a child of the old lantern, and then I'm simply going to delete that lantern. There we go. New lantern with light. We are good to go there. Let's move on to the next one. And there we go, our prefabs have been updated in our scene. Now, if I decide that the lights need to be adjusted, I can quickly and easily go to 1, make the required adjustments, and then I can apply all the changes across the board. So that's great. I'm going to set that light back to normal, and then apply that back. Excellent, so let's zoom out and see how we're doing. I'm going to deselect this light. And not too bad. I like the level of color that is hitting our floor. Let's see how it looks in combination with our fog. So I'm going to press play. There we go, and that's looking pretty cool. So the things that are jumping out at me right now is that the starting area where the player is currently looks a little bit flat, so we want to add some color information there, and maybe to the area where our first enemy is as well. If we jump over to the scene view, kind of replicate the camera angle, I'm liking the endpoint of the bridge, but again, where the door is, it's a little bit flat and uninteresting. So we want our character's eye to be drawn to this door, so we put more lighting information here. It would also probably be a good idea to add a light to the area where our treasure chest is. In our next clip, we'll finish up this lighting block out.